Yo, I got a test today, but I figure might as well read chapter 1 before, chapter 2 before, or chapter 3, depending on how much time I got. I got like about 40 minutes, so fuck it, let's get into chapters 2 and maybe 3 of The Poison Princess. Shit. Don't want there to be like a shit ton of background noise. Just keep it on a little bit, actually. Let's just push it further. Alright, so let's get it. So to recap, in yesterday, it was pretty much we're going in and introducing us to Evie and her boyfriend Brandon, yada yada yada. But other than that, it was also telling us how she's insane, and then we're gonna continue the rest of it right now. To preserve his paint job, Brand parked in the back of the Sterling High School lot. Even among the many Mercedes and Beamers, his car attracted attention. I climbed out and collected my book bag, groaning under the weight, hoping Brandon would take a hint. He didn't. So, on an already stifling morning, I would be schlepping my own stuff. I told myself I liked that he didn't help me with my books. Brand was a modern man, treating me as an equal. I told myself that a lot on our long trek toward the front entrance. Probably just as well, I had my secret sketchbook in my bag, and I had learned the hard way never to let it out of my possession. When we reached the freshly irrigated quad, someone produced a football, and Brand's eyes locked on it like a retriever's. Somehow, he broke his trained gaze to look at me with a questioning expression. I sighed, smoothing my hair frantically, braiding once we'd reach Sterling city limits. Go, I'll see you inside. You're the best, Eves, he grinned with dimples, his hazel eyes bright. I figured even you can make it from here by yourself. I was, in fact, directionally challenged for someone who didn't have a mean bone in For someone who didn't have a mean bone in his body, he tended to land some zingers. I reminded myself that Brandon had a good heart. He just genuinely didn't know better. I began to realize that he was a good boy, but not yet a great guy. Maybe I could drag him over the finish line with that. He planted a sweet kiss on my lips, then jogged off with one hand raised for the ball. Heading toward the front doors, I passed a rose bush with double blooms, a poppy red, my favorite color. A breeze blew, making it seem like the flowers swayed to face me. Ever since I could remember, I love all the plant life. I drew roses, oaks, vine crops, and berry briars, compulsively fascinated with their shapes, their blooms, their defense. My eyelids would go off half-mast, and from the scent of freshly tilled pasture land, which was part of my problem. I wasn't normal. Teenage girls should be obsessed with clothes and boys, not the smell of dirt and the admirable deviousness of briars. Come touch, but you'll pay a price. A metallic blue Beamer screeched into the parking space just feet from me. The driver laying on the horn, Melissa Warren, my best friend and sister from another mister. Mel was hyper-attractive, wild child who was a stranger to shame and had never acquainted herself with embarrassment. And she always leaped before she looked. I was already surprised she'd managed to survive her summer overseas without me. We'd been best friends for a decade, but without a doubt, I was the brains of our operations. I couldn't have missed her more, considering her 5'11" height. Mel, damn, that's my height. That's like my ex was that high. Damn. I like tall guys. Back to the book. Mel hopped out of her car with surprising speed, raising her straightened arms over her head and snapping her fingers. That's how you park a car, bitches. Mel was going through a phase lately where she called everyone bitches. Her mother was the guidance counselor of our school because Mel's dad had paid for Sterling High's new library and because Mrs. Warren needed a hobby. Most parents figured that if Melissa Warren was a product of her parenting skills, then they shouldn't put much stock in Mrs. Warren's guidance skills. Today, Mel wore a crisp navy skirt and a red baby doll t-shirt that had probably cost $50,000 and would never be worn again. Her bright Noir lipstick was a classic red to match her auburn hair tied with the navy blue prepster chick. Prepster chick. In short order, she popped her trunk, dragged out her designer book bag, and then locked her keys in the car. Or she locked her keys in the car. With a shrug, and she joined me. Hey, look over my shoulder. Is that Spencer in the quad with brands? Spencer Stevens, 11. Spencer Steffens the third. Brand's best friend. When I nodded, she said, he's looking at me right now, isn't he? All pining like. He was in no way looking at Mel. This year, I'm taking our flirtationship to a new level. Mel informed me he just needs to be nudged in the right direction. Unfortunately, Mel didn't know how to nudge. She played punched hard, titty twisted with impunity, and wasn't above the occasional headlock. And that was if she liked you. In a pissy tone, she added, maybe if your boyfriend would finally set us up. Brandon had laughed the last time I'd asked him, saying, as soon as you housebreak her. Note to self, put in another request today. Two of our friends spotted us, then Grace Ann had on a yellow satin dress that complemented her flawless cafe skin. Catherine, Ashley, jewelry sparkled from a mile away. The four of us were popular bowhead cheerleaders, and I was proud of it. They smiled and waved excitedly as if I hadn't seen them every day last week. As we'd spilled deets about our vacations, Mel had modeled in Paris, Grace had gone to Hawaii, and Catherine had toured New Zealand. After I repeatedly declared my summer was the most boring ever, they'd stop asking me about it. I was pictureless, had 0 images on my phone for 3 months, not a single upload. It was as if I hadn't even existed. But I dutifully owed and awed as their pics blurred crop shots of the Eiffel Tower and all. Brand's pics of himself smiling at the beach or at his parents. Ritzy's get-together of the heart. Ritzy's get-together or on a yacht cruising the Gulf Coast had been like a knife to the heart, because I should have been in all of them. Last spring he had an entire folder on his phone stuffed with pics and vids of us goofing off together. Great dress, Eves, Catherine Ashley said. Grace Ann Gaze was assessing. Great everything. But boho braid, and no frills dress and flirty heels. Nicely done. With the sigh, I teased, if only my friends knew how to dress too. As we walked towards the front door, a student stopped and turned. Girls checking out what we were wearing, guys checking for the summer's worth of developing curves. Funny thing about our school, that there was no distinct cliques like you saw on TV shows. Like you saw on TV shows, just gratification of popularity. I waved at different folks again and again, much to the bowheads' amusement. I was pretty much friends with everyone. No one ever sat alone during my lunch period. No girl walked the halls with the wardrobe malfunction on my watch. I had even shut down the sale of freshman elevator passes on our one-story campus when we reached the entrance of a white stuccoed building. I realized school was just what I needed: routine, friends, and normalcy. Here I could forget all about the crazy, all the nightmares. This was my world, my little queendom. The sudden rumble of motorcycles had made everyone go silent, like a needle scratching across an old record. No way they'd be the same creepers from before. That group had looked too old for high school and wouldn't have passed them. And wouldn't we have passed them? But then it was like a gentle town of Sterling had many motorcyclists. I gazed behind me, saw the same 5 kids from earlier. Now I was ready to meld into the upholstery, each of them dressed in dark clothing amongst our student bodies, ever-present khakis and bright couture. They stood out like bruises. The biggest boy, the one who leered at me, ramped over the curb on a quad, pulling right up to the side to park. The others followed. I noticed their bikes all had mismatched parks, likely stolen. Who are they? I asked. Have they come to start trouble? Grace answered. Haven't you heard that they're the bunch of juvies from Basin High School? Basin High School? That was in a totally different parish on the other side of the levee. Basin equaled Cajun. But why are they here? They're attending Sterling, Catherine said. Because of the new bridge they built across the levee, the kids at the outer edge of the basin are now closer to us than to their old school. Before the bridge, those Cajuns would have had to drive all the way around the swamp to get here, 50 miles at least. Until the last decade or so, the Bayou folks had been isolated. They still spoke Cajun French and ate frog legs, though I never been to Basin Town. All of Haven's farm's help came from there, and my crazy old grandmother still had friends there. I knew a lot about the area, a place rumored to be filled with hot-blooded women, hard-fighting men, and unbelievable poverty, Mel said. Mel said my mom had to go on an emergency faculty meeting last night about how best to acclimate them or something like that. I could almost feel sorry for this group of kids to go from their Cajun poor and academically Catholic parish to our rich town in Louisiana Protestants. Culture clash round 1. This was actually happening. Not only would I have to see the guy who shamelessly ogled me, I'd be in the same school with him. I know in my eyes impatiently for him to take off his helmet. He had the advantage of me. I didn't like it. He stood unfolding. His tall frame he had to be more than 6 feet in height, even taller than Bran. He had on scuffed boots, worn jeans, and a black t-shirt that stretched tight over his chest. Besides him was a couple of bikers, a kid in camo pants and a girl in a pleather miniskirt. A big boy helped her off her bike, easily swinging her up. Whoa. Oh hell, Catherine said. Good to know her panties were hot pink. Shocked, and she's wearing them. Actually, classy with a capital K, Mel nodded thoughtfully. I finally understood who buys vajazzling kits. Grace Ann, proud wearer of the purity rings, screwed her face up into an expression of distaste. Surely she's going to get sent home for that short, with the skirt that short. Not to mention her midriff bearing shirt, which read, I got bourbon faced on Shit Street. Once he set the girl on her feet, she took off her helmet and revealing long chestnut brown hair and a face made up to an embarrassing degree with glaring Fachisa lipstick. The skinny boy who'd been driving her removed his own helmet. He had dark blonde hair and long face, which wasn't unhandsome but still reminded me of a fox. He revved his motorcycle, startling 2 passerbyers, and his friends laughed, or rather a weasel. Strike, feeling sorry for them. Finally the big one reached for his helmet. I waited. He yanked it off. Shook. shook out his hair, and raised his head. My lips parted. Mel's voice voiced my thoughts. I kind of wasn't expecting that. I tangled a jet black hair fell over his forehead with jutting tassels above his ears. His face was deeply tanned and with a lantern jaw and strong chin. He looked to be older than 18. Overall, shit. My page just got wet the other day. Overall, but then it wasn't like. Alright, hold on. I'm gonna restart that sentence. No, that paragraph. No way he'd be in the same creepers from before. That group had looked old for high school. And Whitney had passed by them, but it was like, what the fuck? I just read this. Hold on. School with them. And oh, okay. Never mind, I'm stupid. He looked to be older than 18. Overall, his features were pleasing, handsome even, though he couldn't hold a candle to Brandon's Abercrombie look. And the boy was attractive in his own rough way. He's gorgeous, Catherine said, her eyes lighting up with interest. We called her Cattlegram because she could never hide her reactions and displaying them for all to see. People passed us in the doorway, speculating about the newcomers. My maid comes from Basin. She said all 5 of them are juvie with records. I heard the tall boy knife 2 guys in the French Quarter. He was just released from a year's stint in a cage the Rage correctional facility. The blonde boy is a sophomore for a 3rd try. Weasel and the big one started for the entrance, leaving the other 2 and the girl to smoke right up in the open. The big one dug a flask from his back pocket. On school grounds, I noticed his fingers were circled with white medical tape. For some reason, while Weasel sneered at everyone he passed, his friends would just see and narrowed his eyes with an unnerving resentment, as if he was disgusted by the kids at the school. As the boys neared, I could make out some of their words they spoke. They spoke Cajun French, and my grandmother had taught it to me before she'd been sent away for years. For years I'd listened to the farm help speak it. As they'd stomped through Haven's fields in their work boots, I followed them in my miniature boots, eagerly listening to their wild tales of life deep in the bayou. I understood the dialect well, and not that this was something to brag about, since I could barely understand proper French. I saw Weasel glowering at a nearby group of the 4 JV cheerleaders. As he stalked closer to the girls, grew visibly nervous, he yelled, "Boo!" and they cried out in fright. Weasel snickered at the girls' reactions, but the other boy just scowled in their direction, muttering, "Collions." He pronounced it "coyons." Idiots. Any tiny lingering inclination to be friendly to the new students, as my usual way, died. They were messing with my khaki tribe, and then Weasel zeroed in on me with a smirk. "Ain't you that Jolie girl in the Porsche? That Porsche?" His Cajun accent was as thick as any I'd ever heard. Turn around you and hike up that dress so I can tell for sure. My friend's shocked expressions had me squaring my shoulders and refusing to be cowed by either of these boys. They'd come into our domain acting like they owned the place. With a sunny smile, I said, "Welcome to our school." My tone was part bubbly, part cutting, a mashup of sugar and snide, so perfected I should TM it. "I'm Evie. If you need assistance finding your way around our campus, just let me know. Just let someone else know." If possible, Weasel's leer depended. "Well, ain't you sweet? Evie. Leon. He pronounced it Linnell. And this here is my partner Jackson DeVoe, also known as Jack Daniels because of the flask. How delightful. Jackson's eyes were a vivid gray against his tan skin, and they were roaming over my face and figured like he hadn't seen a girl in years, or hadn't seen me minutes ago. Linnell continued, I don't need no assistance finding our way, no, but there's other things you can assist us with. Jackson jammed his shoulders into Linnell's back, forcing him along as they walked down the hall. The big Cajun snapped under his breath. Koyon's tuva pa Koyon's tuva pa dra liputs inita. My eyes widened as understanding hit me. Catherine said, did you see the way that boy was looking at Evie? I didn't understand the words of the gibberish they were talking, Mel said, and I just got back from Paris. She turned to me. So what'd the big one say? Grace asked. You speak Cajun? A little, a lot. Thought, though I didn't particularly want everyone to Sterling to know I spoke the Basin tongue. I translated. Idiots, you're not going to chat up one of those useless bitches. Catherine gasped. You lied. As I watched Jackson striding down the hall, I noticed with amazement that the flask was not the only thing he kept in the back pocket of his jeans. I could clearly make out a knife, a folded blade outlined in faded denim. Then I frowned. Was he heading into my homeroom? Grace said, wait a second. What did that boy mean about you hike up your red dress in the Porsche? And that's chapter 2. I'm probably going to read chapter 3 a little later today. I got like 30 minutes, 15 minutes early, so gotta be in 15 minutes. I'm probably going to be there, but yeah.